Thinking about moving to the country?
Maybe you don't know where to look or what to look for.
We decided 10 years ago that we were going to move out of the cities. And in this video, we're going to share with you 7 key elements to look for to help you in your search for your country property.
If we're just meeting for the first time, we're Michael and Dana with Living Quite Simply.
We're passionate about minimalism and frugal living on the homestead.
If you're joining us again, welcome back. We so appreciate you being part of the community. The first thing you're going to want to look for is an independent water source. This can come in a variety of ways. A spring, a well, a creek, a pond, maybe even a lake.
Notice how she said independent water source. This is because you want to have some type of water source where if the municipal water goes down, is contaminated, you have some stability, you have a resource that you can utilize yourself. It's for sustainability. You're not being charged for it. Also, you're able to treat it how you want to, whether that's filtration versus chemical treatment. You know what's in your water system and how it's being treated.
So we definitely have our personal preferences when it does come to the type of water source that we would want to look for in a country property. But one of the considerations is going to be what are the usages that you're using your water for. Now obviously we are all going to need water for our home. We're going to need water that we're going to be drinking, that we're going to be using for bathing, for washing clothes and dishes and these type of a thing. But then you also need to consider water that you're going to be using for irrigation, or whether you want water on your property to be used for recreation,
like a creek or a pond to swim in during the summertime. Also, don't forget about your animals. If you have livestock, they need to drink as well.
So one thing you definitely want to look for is consistency of output, especially when it comes to the water that you're going to be using for your home, for your irrigation, for your animals. You're going to want something that's not just going to run dry.
That's right. Certain water sources can be seasonal. Creeks, springs, ponds, all of those can dry up in the summertime. So you want to make sure that whatever you're using is going to be able to sustain you through the year. Another key consideration in looking at your water source is accessibility. So we recently looked at a property that had a pond on it, and the property bordered the edge of the pond, but we had access to the full pond, and it was also shared with other landowners locally. So that's something to take into account with a creek or a pond or something of that nature that's a lot larger. That could be a good thing, or it might be a bad thing, especially if you don't want people coming around your property. They will have access to your property if it is via a water source like a pond or a lake or something. The second thing we look for in a country property is if it has a stand of trees. This is important to us because a nice stand of trees can provide a number of different things. 1, a heat source, 2, privacy, and 3, even a possible means of income. I've binge watched many episodes on YouTube about how you could build so many things using wood on your property. Get a nice sawmill, load it over to your property, and build just about anything you want. I'm really interested in timber framing, and honestly, if we had a property of our own with a nice stand of trees, that would become a possibility. Now granted, there are some things that you want to look for in a nice stand of trees. You're going to want to get a tree stand that is actually well developed. You want older trees because that's where you're going to get your size, but you also want to have some younger trees as well, so you have new growth coming in. You don't want anything too dense and you don't want anything too sparse. If you had to choose one, I would choose the denser. So back to making a profit or marketing your timber, here's where that comes into play. If you want to thin out your stand of trees, you can hire a timber company and they will come in and harvest timber off of your property, therefore thinning it out, while you get to make some money off of that harvest. If you're getting value, go ahead and subscribe because we love talking about these types of things.
Third on our list is a place to grow your food. You're going to want to have a great garden spot and orchard.
This is a must-have. Just think, if you can grow your own food, the quality is going to be better, the taste, unbelievable. And you don't have to depend on the store for your food.
So when you're looking for a country property, it doesn't necessarily have to have a garden spot already on it. It doesn't necessarily have to have fruit trees or berries already planted.
Or raised beds. The idea here is you want an ideal location that would be great to start a garden. What does that look like? A few things. South facing, an open area where you're not going to have shade from trees. And then obviously your soil composition. you can't grow a garden on rocks.
No.
Number 4 on the list is privacy. You might think, oh, you're out in the country, privacy is a given, but that's not always the case. Here's an example. We've lived on 3 acres where a house was set back from the road. We were surrounded by a buffer of hundreds of acres of cow pasture and trees versus a 100-acre property that we lived on, and the house was 50 feet from the road. Not so private.
That being said, as a general rule, the more acreage that you're going to have, the more secluded that you're going to be. But obviously, these are 2 extreme examples that we had that wasn't necessarily the case in either of those situations. But when you are in the country and you are in an environment where you have seclusion, it is just such a peaceful environment. And you're the one setting the tone for your home and for your property. There's nothing else. There are no other distractions coming in.
That's what we love. Renting has allowed us to basically sift through these lists and figure out what's most important to us in looking for a country property.
So when you are renting, even though there are going to be things still that are high on your priority list that are important to you, I find that we feel more flexibility. If we don't have everything on our list, I feel a lot more comfortable about that in the fact that we are renting than I would if we were looking for a country property to buy. So when you are actually going to be investing in a home, it is important that you can have as many, if not all of these factors as is possible.
That being said, there's no perfect property, and that's why it's all about prioritizing.
If you're finding this video helpful, please hit the like button. I'm really excited about point 5, and that is a strategic location. We have this book, it's one of our favorite books written by Joel Skousen. It's called Strategic Relocation. And it's very important that you do find a strategic location when you are considering where you're going to be finding a country home. And he covers everything you can imagine in this book. Some of the considerations that you might have for a particular state are: what are the homeschooling laws like? Does that state respect constitutional rights? What are the natural disasters in that area? What's the climate in that area? How high is the crime? What's the population density? There are so many factors in this book that are considered. I highly recommend the book, but it is important that you do choose a strategic location.
The most detail is in the United States, but it does have geographic locations across the world that would be ideal or less ideal to locate to.
And before I forget, we are linking down below some of our favorite country living books, including Strategic Relocation, so check those out.
Number 6 is the potential that the property has for alternative energy. If you're not familiar with what those are, most commonly wind energy, solar, and microhydro. So depending on the layout of the land, one could be better for you than another. So this is something that you're going to want to look into when you're observing a property. Maybe there's something that's important to you that we haven't covered. We'd love to hear it in the comments below.
The 7th thing that you're going to want to consider in finding your country property is the accessibility. Now, when you are considering accessibility, there's actually going to be different preferences for different people. Some people are going to want it to be as accessible as possible. Some people are going to want it to be very difficult to get into.
So some things that come to mind: springtime or the rainy season in most locations, mud could be horrible and make it very hard to get in and out of your property. Wintertime, if you live in an area north, snow might be an issue. Also, depending on where you live, flooding could be an issue in the winter or spring months.
Another thing that you want to consider when talking about accessibility is what access do people have to your property, and are you having to access through somebody else's property to get to your property?
Easements.
You wouldn't want to be in a situation where you buy a house, you realize that you're driving through somebody else's property to get to your property, and then only after buying the house do you realize that actually there was not a legal easement from their property to yours, so you actually don't have a legal right to even get to your property. At the same time, if you do have some small country road running through your property, you want to know who has access to that road. So finding out the accessibilities of a home from other properties is something that's very important to consider before purchasing the property.
You could typically find this information out by contacting your local county assessor. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos like this. Please subscribe. See you next time.